The United Nations just released a report that over the period between 2000 to 2015, $836 billion of illicit funds were extracted from Africa. Uh, Colonialism never ended. It just rebranded itself and it got a new form of mechanization and dressing and appearance. Mm, how is it that this much money can leave this so called undeveloped place that's supposed to be poor and go to these developed places that are supposed to be wealthy, well organized, well tracked, with systems of governance based on fairness and accountability and transparency? How is it that none of these people are facing charges at the International Criminal Court? Oh, wait. The International Criminal Court is in France. Um, I'll talk about France in a second. Don't worry. I bet you. I mean, I don't want to make speculations, but I would say a large percentage, a significant percentage of these illicit funds go to France. Um, I say that the game of geopolitics can actually be simply broken down into a game of kings and castles. Nothing has changed. It's just become more dressed up in these trappings of complexity in order to discourage the average person from looking too much. This is actually a very common trick. You wrap something in layers of complexity to discourage and also to essentially stall the time of the average citizenry from looking into these matters and affairs. So, I will do reductionism for you down to the game of kings and castles. A king has his castle. Within the castle, or let's say the kingdom, but let's keep it simple. Let's say the castle. Within the castle and the kingdom uh, lives his court, right? And behind the castle is the kingdom and his people, right? If the king cannot defend his castle, he will either have to do two things, or he will either be subjected to two things. He will either lose his castle to another king, or that king will become a vassal, a subject of another king, who forces that king to pay tribute in order to, I guess you can save face. Maybe you can still become personally wealthy, but the vast majority of the wealth, the resources, and your entire system will be turned into a resource extraction system. You become a colony if you cannot defend your castle. The kings of Africa lost wars to the Europeans, which is why black people are all around the world. They failed to defend their castles, and they still fail to do so to this day. Now, it's not that they don't know that they need to. It's just that when you lose to a certain extent, it becomes very difficult to get back into the place of being able to defend your castle. And by the way, this isn't just Africa. I'm just talking about Africa because of this report. South America suffers from the same thing. The Middle East, they suffer largely from the same thing, except they have a ton of pride, so they always fight back. But, I mean, you see the results there. It just turns into endless flames. Um, so, most of the kings in Africa, as we're just calling them metaphorically, but a lot of them are essentially kings. I mean, you got people like Paul Biya, who, this guy's been in power over 35 years. You have guys like Nasing Bey in Togo. I mean, he's been in power about 20 years, but his father before him was in power for 38 years. So, um, I mean, we have an over 50-year dynasty that we're looking at there. Um, Maybe not saying Bay's been in there, but maybe 15, 18 years. They're definitely over a 50-year-old dynasty, completely and utterly supported by the French government, by the way, given arms to suppress their civilian population from any form of uprising or equity in the society. That is completely against the agenda. That's not good for France. France doesn't see that as beneficial for it. It's not about those people. It's about France, right? In that particular arrangement. France isn't the only criminal, but France has 14 colonies in Africa still to this day. It's 2020, and France still has 14 colonies. So these kings are vassals. Their resources are extracted. And we talk about the illicit funds. Is it really that illicit? Because I'm going to challenge this UN report. How illicit is it? I mean, yes, a certain percentage of it is taken by people who are not those corrupt leaders and individuals. But let's be quite frank and honest. A lot of this is being taken by multinational corporations, your Glencores, your Trafiguras, and I'm not trying to point the finger at any one of them necessarily, and it's not even necessarily totally their fault. They're kind of just players in the game, right? A system has been set up where it says, hey, those are just vassal states over there. If you need some stuff, if you got the money to set up the apparatus and employ some mercenaries to protect it, you can pretty much take it. I think the best example is Congo. I mean, in Congo, you literally have multinationals from multiple countries. I mean, and we have German, you have Belgian, you have British, you have American, you have French, multiple multinationals backed by the intelligence services of these countries, by the way. There's a fantastic book by Wayne Madsen that's called, I have it over here, Secret Wars and Genocide in Africa, 1993 to 2003. So you have intelligence organizations working with multinational corporations that extract the resources and mercenary groups that help, ease the whole thing along. So that is really the crux of the game. It's nothing more than a game of kings and castles. If you have a strong king in Africa who doesn't allow his country to be gutted, then they will try to gut him. The only way he will stand and stop this movement of so-called illicit funds is if he was able to protect himself. And furthermore, these are the ones that they are saying are illicit, the off-books transactions. And they're saying a lot of it is because of undeclared monies or amounts of goods on export paperwork. We talk about gold and basically fudging the invoice to say you're extracting less gold than you are, so therefore the country doesn't know how much gold really left, and you pay a tax rate on a lesser amount, and but is it 100% of the time that you've really tricked these people? No, I don't. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I mean, a lot of these people are actually pretty savvy. They know that they should get, but when you're a massive multinational from a state that is the overlord of your state, and truly the governments know, the African governments know, if I cause too much trouble for an American multinational, I might hear from the CIA. And I don't like hearing, no one likes hearing from the CIA. People think that the West is wealthy because the West is more talented than the rest of the world or more intelligent than the rest of the world. I think it actually boils more down to brutality and the willingness to either do horrific acts in order to gain advantage, or, in the lesser sense, be willing to look away. What I've seen in a lot in my time in the United States is that people are really, really apt to look away. I mean, they actually say things like ignorance is bliss. That's what they say. They're like, oh, I know the world's really messed up, but ignorance is bliss. What a cop out. If there was a term, a phrase to say, my personal mental comfort matters more to me than knowing what fucking ills I'm contributing to and my government does and the truth about the world and why the world is the way it is, all of that is less important to me than the fact that I get to feel good about myself. By the fact that I get to enjoy my tea and crumpets. I mean, I don't want to digress too much. But, you know, the so-called illicit funds report is interesting. And then what about the non-illicit, right? Is Frank Afrique going to be part of this report? No, it's not. Frank Afrique was not mentioned. Frank Afrique was not mentioned. And because it is cleverly, diabolically set up as something that is, you know, on paper, right? Because people have signed treaties under duress, and they've signed these accords under duress, thus it's on paper. And the extraction happens on paper. And for those of you who don't know what Franc-Afrique is, Franc is the neo-colonialist system in Africa. After these nations, well, these nations never really got independence, but after they got their fall independence, France organized a system where they said, hey, you know, we believe you're inferior. Let us manage everything for you. Trust us. You need us. But in truth, of course, it's just to gut them. Because if you look at the worst countries in Africa, they're countries under the Franc-Afrique system. You can look that up with the exception of Congo and Somalia. But the rest, I mean, the vast majority, I mean, the best countries in Africa were former British colonies, right? You know, Egypt, well, Egypt in certain ways, you know, it had its good times and it's had its downs. But Egypt is much better than Gabon or Ivory Coast or Cameroon or Togo, right? Egypt is much better than those countries. But anyway, Kenya, Ghana, Botswana, they're all doing far better than the French vassal states. So this entire idea, oh, you know, we believe you're inferior, therefore let us control your entire. I mean, when I say control the country, I really mean it. Let me break it down to you. The CFA franc is a currency that is governed by France and mandated to these countries that they must use. So we talk about illicit funds transfer. That 836 billion number, I'm telling you, it's not even half of it. I'm telling you right now. Okay, so that's mechanism number one. You have a currency that is governed by France that essentially, originally it was only able to be traded for the franc in France, right? Only France really truly used the franc, and it was never really a global currency. And, you know, they also set the rate. So they set the rate, and then today now they allow you to change it from franc to euro. Well, if someone sets the rate at which your currency can be converted into a quote unquote hard currency like the euro and says that the euro is the only one that you can convert into, so you can't go, you know, straight from having CFA franc and then turn it to dollar. No, you need to turn it into, I mean, basically internally traded francs and then to euro with a rate set by France. Welcome to Dave and Buster's, right? Welcome to Chuck E. Cheese. That's where these countries live economically. They live in a Dave and Buster's Chuck E. Cheese world where someone sets the rates. They go up with their tickets and tokens. They bring 10 million of their currency and, France says, okay, well, that's worth 100,000. You talk about how you keep someone in poverty? Okay. Second mechanism is the fact that these countries are required to keep at least 50% of their reserves in France and in the French central bank. The French central bank then in turn invests this into the French economy via the French stock market and via the underbanks of the French central banks via loans to them. That's the second mechanism, is taking the government reserves that they have, at least half of them, and investing it in the French economy. How the hell does that help these African countries? Absolutely no way. That's just theft. It's just theft under duress. But it's not illicit, so it's not on the UN report. Third mechanism. We're still going here. Third mechanism. In order to get any of these reserves back, they must take them as a loan at interest to the French central bank. I mean, this is incredible. You ask yourself, maybe, as listening to me, why did you not learn this in school? Because they feed you nothing but propaganda. They don't want you to look at certain things. They've controlled your salience. You don't know the level of actual devilishness that is being perpetrated on this world. They don't want you to know. That's why I have to make YouTube videos anonymously with black screens, man. Anyway, let me not digress too much. How have you not heard of this? This is huge, right? So these countries stay perpetually in debt to France. So they control the currency. You keep the reserves stay in France. The reserves get invested into the French economy. The French then only give those reserves back to you as a loan. They steal your money and then loan it back to you. This is real gangster stuff. Even the mafia, I don't think they did this one. I don't even remember this on The Sopranos. This was a new scheme. You would have been a top earner in the mafia if you came with this one. Whew, the mafia never even went this far. I mean, yeah, they'll extort you, but they don't make you keep all their money in the mafia bank and then loan it back to you at mafia interest. Goodness gracious. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, such is the state of affairs. I mean, it's really as simple as, hey, if you don't have the ability to say no to France, they will economically rape your country. If you can't say no to the United States, they'll do the same thing. If you can't say no to Great Britain, they'll do the same thing. That is the world we live in. Africa is rich, but Africans are poor. Yeah. Uh, One day maybe we'll advance as a civilization past the law of the jungle, the game of kings and castles. Maybe one day. Um, but until then, I guess we just keep building military technology to kill each other. Yeah, I guess. Peace. I wish.